we feel bad about this, but can we put you in the broom closet, right? So they put me in a broom closet with the bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hey everybody, what's up? Trey Wingo here. Welcome into another episode of Half Forgotten History. We're kind of doing a double dip on this show. We have one of the best college players of all time. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, but he's also in the rarefied air of the fewest people ever to pull off a double dip, going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and winning the Heisman Trophy. I'm talking about Touchdown Timmy, which was his name at Notre Dame, Hall of Famer Tim Brown. Sit back and relax and listen to his story from growing up in Dallas and the unusual recruiting visit he had when he went to SMU. You're going to enjoy it. First of all, just delighted to be talking to one of the greatest band members in the history of Woodrow Wilson High School in Dallas, Texas, and Tim Brown. Like I did not know that. In doing my research, I did not know you were a band member at Woodrow Wilson before you were a football player.
A couple of years ago, they gave me an honorary band membership type deal for the rest of my life or whatever. So, yeah, a lot of people don't know I played the percussions in the marching band, during the varsity games my freshman year. So, pretty interesting.
Yeah. But you did that because your mom wouldn't let you play football.
Yeah, well, I was playing, but she didn't know. That's right. That's a real story. She didn't know anything about it. She thought that so my sophomore year, when I actually had made the varsity team and I was playing on Thursday and Friday nights, she thought I was still in the marching band. Yeah. And crazy me, I had an incredible first month of the season. They named me sophomore sensation, and my name ended up in the paper, and all her friends were calling her, and she thought I did something bad. So she was all over me like, "What did you do? What did you do?" I said, "Mom, you probably need to look at the sports page." So there she saw my face with sophomore sensation labeled by it.
And she really found out about you not playing in the band because the band director called her and said he's not coming to practice?
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to stay in the band, obviously not the marching band, but I wanted to stay in the band. But it got to the point where it just wasn't going to work out. So so I had to move on, and she didn't like that at all, because I played the drums in our church. Yeah. So she thought that if I got away from doing it in high school in the band, that I wouldn't want to do it. So it was one of those type things.
Listen, I'm not saying you wouldn't have been the next, great band drummer of all time, but I think you might have made the right choice in going with football.
I think she finally, after I was inducted to the Hall of Fame, said I made the right choice. So she finally came around after 25, 30 years.
It took her a while to get there.
It took her a while, but she got there. That's the most important thing.
And the other thing we should point out is that you went to the same high school as Davy O'Brien, for whom the Davy O'Brien Award is named in college, which goes to the best quarterback in the land. And when you won your Heisman, which we'll get to that a little bit later, Woodrow Wilson High School became the first high school anywhere with 2 Heisman Trophy winners. Yeah,
it became the first public high school. I think Matt Liner went to Mater Dei for 1 year. We don't count that, right?
No,
but,
no.
Man, it was pretty fantastic. I had met Davy O'Brien's son because Mr. O'Brien passed away in the late 70s, I believe. But I had met his son, looks just like him, 5'7", 5'8". I mean, spitting image of him. And we actually had a little relationship before, all this Heisman stuff came along. So it was great to be able to connect with the family. And for a couple of years, I was a part of the Davy O'Brien Award that they gave out over in Fort Worth.
So when you were younger, what was your passion? Was it music, or did you always love football? What was the thing that really grabbed you as a kid?
I love music, man. I really did. I love playing the drums. I still play a mean tambourine in church now. You know what I mean? So it was just something that was really a big part of me. I did sports, man, because my friends did sports, right? They played football, played basketball, ran track. I played football, played basketball, ran track. I knew I had the ability to make people miss on the football field and, maybe jump a little higher, even though I was a short guy. I was only 5'9", 5'10", 5'9", 5'10" in high school, but I could dunk a basketball. I could block shots. I could do all that stuff. I mean, I knew I had talent, but I never thought about Notre Dame, Heisman Trophy, 17 years in NFL type talent. And, so it was really just to have fun, man. But my passion was really in music.
So when did you sort of realize that, okay, I enjoy playing music and I'll probably do that for my entire life. I might be able to be really good at this football thing.
Yeah, well, when Notre Dame came knocking my junior year, my whole family was like, "What is going on?" I mean,
Yeah.
Timmy did what? Who wanted him to do what? They no one can figure it out because it wasn't a deal where everybody came to my high school football games. We were horrible, right? We were 4-25-1. Nobody wanted to come see us play. I mean, but all of a sudden when Notre Dame came knocking, we knew that there was something there. At worst, it looked like there was an opportunity to get a great education, right? If not at Notre Dame, then at some other college. And Trey, my family, man, that's what they were focused on. When I walked out the door, they had to Notre Dame. They'd say, "Hey, look, boy, there's no future in football for you. You go up there and get that education and get on back home." You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's just the type of family I came from. My mom and dad had literally had to drop out of high school, pick cotton back in the day, in Louisiana. My mom got pregnant at a very early age, so she never went back until she got older. My dad never went back. So they wanted, and all my sisters and my brother had, were in college at the time or out of college. And so that was the only focus was for me to get a college education.
Well, you certainly got a great education at Notre Dame, but you had to choose. Like, if you were going down a murderer's row of colleges to choose from in the 80s, like the schools that were interested in you, not only Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oklahoma, SMU, and Iowa. And I'm just curious, how much of a draw was SMU, obviously being from Dallas? And I went to Baylor in the early 80s, okay?
Yeah,
so I was there for the entire SMU experience. Like, I lived it in real time.
Right.
What they were going through in the Polo Pony Express and all that kind of stuff. What was it about Notre Dame that drew you over? It's like playing in your hometown.
Look, I have to be honest with you and say this, that if not for what was going on at SMU, I think I would have ended up at SMU. I'm a mama's boy, and going 1,200 miles away was not appetizing to me at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it really came down to Notre Dame of nowhere. I got a letter from Penn State like really late in the game. No teams on the West Coast really recruited me at that time. I don't think they were really recruiting Texas at that time. I had a ton of family in Southern California. So it would have been very interesting if I would have got a letter from Southern California, if I would have, chosen to go there or not. But it really came down, my brother, he's 8 years older, was this big Subway alumni Notre Dame guy. He knew everything about the school. I had never heard of Notre Dame, and he knew absolutely everything about it. So he was telling my mom and dad, hey, this is a great education school. If they want him a year from now, this is where he needs to go. I had to go to a school computer or whatever and look it up to find out where Notre Dame was. I had no clue where it was, So, and then when I found that out, I was like, dude, I want no parts of going 1,200 miles away from home.
It's funny you say that because you're the second person that I've had on this pod that didn't understand Notre Dame. Jerome Bettis, when he was being recruited, he thought it was Notre Dame in France when he got a letter. He thought he got a letter from the cathedral in Paris. That's what he thought. So as bad as you didn't know, it wasn't as bad as what Jerome didn't know. Just so you know,
I knew it was in the United States. I didn't know that much, but no, man. Look, it was a unique situation, no doubt about it. And the way Notre Dame, found out about me, that whole thing, they came to recruit another kid, Dante Jones, who played 10 years at middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Yeah. And, that night I had 4 touchdowns. I played 27 years of football. The only game I scored 4 touchdowns is when Notre Dame came to recruit somebody else, So it's a very, very, I like to say touching story, but, I don't know what other people may say.
Timing is everything. Let's just put it that way. Absolutely. And for people that may not understand what we're talking about with SMU, SMU was a national program that had sort of come out of nowhere under Ron Meyer, Eric Dickerson, Craig James, Lance McElhaney, all these great players, T.D. Briggs, Kit Case, all these defensive studs. And then they were in the middle of one of the greatest scandals of all time in terms of just, they had literally a payroll to pay their players, which now with NIL, I guess you can do, but it was really illegal in the 80s. And they became the first and only school to get the death penalty. The program was decimated. So where in the process of that investigation were they when they started recruiting you, and how much did that sort of hang over your decision?
Trey, I'm going to tell you a story that I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly before. I really don't. So I'm walking home from school, right? After basketball practice, right? Yeah. My junior year, after basketball practice, I'm walking home, and my high school principal, he went to SMU and he ran the clocks. He was still running the clocks for football games for SMU. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he swoops me up, right? I mean, literally, like, because we walk home through like a little, foresty area, whatever, and I don't know where he came from, man, but all of a sudden he was there. He takes me directly over to SMU, right? Of course, I'm not supposed to be there, but I'm there. Right. I'm sitting in there talking to the coaches and all the coaches got me at a table, and they got Kentucky Fried Chicken. I have to mention that because that's part of the story. And all of a sudden, one of the secretary comes in and she whispers something in Collins' ear, Coach Collins. And the blood just leaves his face, right? You could just tell something just happened. And so he, gets his coaches together and they, they're all like sweating bullets, man. It's like, Tim, we feel bad about this, but can we put you in the broom closet, right? So they put me in a broom closet with the bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and come to find out, one of the sports casters here in Dallas, Channel 8, Dale Hansen, who was doing a big story, he was sitting there interviewing him, and they were asking him, "Would you ever illegally recruit anybody?" And I'm in the closet with a bucket of chicken, and I hear Collins say, "I would never illegally recruit." That's when I got the idea that what they were. I was 16 years old, Trey. I had no clue, man. My family really didn't know what was happening at the time, and it's when I told my brother that story, he freaked out. You know what I mean? And went to Woodrow, told the high school, and so I mean that pretty much. My mom and dad, because of my brother, because they really didn't know much about it, they weren't going for it, man. So that almost eliminated SMU on the spot.
That's a remarkable story, because for anybody that sort of lived through that experience in the 80s, Dale Hansen's interview with the recruiters and some of the guys at SMU, where he calls them out and has their signatures on these payments to players. And they're like, well, I guess that must be my signature. I don't know how it got there. I don't know how that money got it. You were literally in a broom closet being illegally recruited while this interview was going on.
While this interview is going on. And I hear all the questions and so, I mean, it was wild and woolly, man. And, my family, man, look, we could have taken a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, not just from SMU, everybody was offering something, and my mom and dad, they just weren't going for it because my brother kept saying, you don't want Timmy to have that kind of legacy. Of course, we didn't know, what was going to happen, but, when we look back on this, we don't want to say, oh, wow, we took that $10,000 from that, one school. We didn't want to be talking like that. And, look, I was just doing what my parents and my big brother said to do. And, thankfully, I think we made the right decisions.
That's one of the craziest stories I think I've ever heard. In the closet.
You can't make that up, man. It's hard to make that up.
No, man. Like Dale Hansen, like that was the thing that brought the thunder down on SMU, and you were in the you were in the
right there
to make chicken. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't know if we're going to top that for the rest of the show, but we're going to keep going. So you get to Notre Dame, and Dallas is a warm place. They get snow every once in a while. I can remember being at Baylor and snow would come through and you would get 8 inches, and the next day it was just gone. It was just evaporate. What was the transition like for you, your first fall/winter in South Bend, Indiana, coming from Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, we and I tell my wife this all the time. She's from California. We've been married 25 years now. and we don't get the snow in Dallas like we used to. And just so happened the other night there was a thing on TV where they were talking about back in the late 70s and early 80s how much snow Dallas used to get back in time. And I'm telling her, that's what I'm telling you. We used to get snow, the regular basis. But, we measured our snow in inches, not in feet. And, the first snow we got at Notre Dame, they said there's going to be 4 feet of snow. And I literally thought, well, they just made a mistake. I mean, because no one can get 4 feet of snow. That's impossible. And then you wake up the next day and there's literally 4 feet of snow on the ground, and you can barely walk. They hadn't cleared out the pathways, and it's like, what is going on? But it really wasn't the snow that got me. It was the cold, because that wind. I mean, in that St. Joe Valley, man, the temperatures get down to 5 or 10 degrees below zero. And you're walking and you get lockjaw because it's so cold. Yeah. I mean, that freaked me out the first time that happened, right? So it was a huge adjustment, man, and I wasn't ready for it. I think I had a little those what do they call them? The jackets they used to call them, Lords of London or whatever, with the belt that goes around long, that the detectives used to wear. I forget what they call them, but
trench coats.
And that's all I had, so I quickly had to get more clothes in order to make it through the winter.
Well, you made it, and you made it a very successful year. You set a freshman record with 28 touchdowns, 28 catches rather, your freshman year. What was it like being there? Because this was sort of when Notre Dame was sort of reasserting itself, and Notre Dame was back on the scene, and that came those classic games, obviously with the University of Miami, that became sort of the stuff of legend. What was it like being there at Notre Dame when Notre Dame sort of became a thing again?
Yeah. Well, when Coach Faust left after our sophomore year, we knew whoever came in was going to be better. Now, I love Coach Faust. I mean, obviously he got me there, and, he still comes around now. And, you can't help but to love the guy because he had the best, the university's best in mind. It just didn't work out for him. But he was a bit over his head. And, even as a young kid, 18 years old in college, you realize that, this coach is over his head. So we knew we were going to be a better team. I knew nothing about Coach Holtz. I really knew nothing about him. And but we quickly found out that this guy was different. He talked differently. Yeah, he's a Catholic guy. He loves Notre Dame. He loves all that. But when it comes to football, man, I mean, he was over the board when as far as how he wanted you to present yourself and things of that nature on the football field. I never forget our big center, big bulky guy, 6'3", 295 pounds, Chuck Lanza. Lou walked in the meeting room, and the meeting room was so small back then. Literally, we could put our feet on the stage, and Chuck had his feet up, and Coach looked at him, and Chuck looked at him, and Coach kicked his feet off the stage. And everybody was like, uh-oh, this is different. Coach Faust would have never done that, man. But, look, we knew right away. The first thing that Coach Ho said to us was that the University of Notre Dame was going to win a championship in 3 years, right?
Yep.
So you got seniors and juniors going, one,
2.
one. That ain't adding up, Coach. That ain't adding up. But he said the only way we're going to win this championship is if the upperclassmen buy in. Because if you guys don't set the table, then it won't happen. And, man, that was a difficult thing to do, Trey, because we wanted to win the championship. You know what I mean? Yeah. How can we win it now, Coach? But, man, we literally had meetings about it. The upperclassmen, we said, look, I mean, this could be part of our legacy too. I mean, they may win it. And, of course, they end up winning the championship 3 years later.
The very next year after you graduated.
Yeah, after I graduated, they won the championship. So, but you feel good that you helped set the table for what happened there for 8, 9, 10 years after we left.
Listen, as far as nicknames go, Touchdown Timmy is a pretty good one, right? Like that if your nickname in college is Touchdown Timmy, then that means you're doing something right. What was your favorite part of being part of that sort of rejuvenation and that Notre Dame experience? Was there a particular game that you really enjoyed more than any other?
Well, I think for us, just to be able to compete with Michigan and Michigan State, we always open up the season with those guys.
Right.
My whole 4 years at Notre Dame, we beat SC every year. So that was, that was not a big thing, but it felt like we were winning differently though. It felt like we were winning more easily now, than we were before, because everything made sense. What we were doing offensively made sense. What we were doing defensively made sense. But I think for me, I had a big game. I think it was at Michigan, where I made a couple plays early in the year, first game of the year. And that just sort of, because Coach Holtz and I had this running thing, right, where he had told me that he thought I could be the best player in the country. And I told him he had the wrong guy. You know what I mean? That I came in to get an education. I'm going to go back home, marry my high school sweetheart, be a deacon in the church, and I'm going to be good. And so he said, son, you can have all that, but you're going to be great also. And so he kept telling me things are going to happen for you that you're not used to. And he was sort of preparing me for that. So when I had that big game in Michigan, now you're like, he said that was going to happen. It didn't happen. So now you want to go and talk to him again and see what else is going to happen in the future, And so I think, man, just having that big, because I had never had a game that big, where, we won a game on the road like that. And it just worked out that everybody was looking at Tim Brown. Tim Brown had made the play, had done this and done that. And all of a sudden now, it was looking like I was somebody to be reckoned with in college football.
Well, you certainly were. And, you were a finalist for the Heisman Trophy in 1987. You end up winning it. You become the first wide receiver ever to win the Heisman Trophy. What were your expectations going into that weekend about what was going to happen?
One of my teammates said something, and only a Notre Dame guy can come up with this, I guess. But he said, Tim, you're going to win the Heisman because – at worst case, you're going to be second place in everybody's ballot,
Yeah.
No one can vote you. If somebody votes you worse than second, then they shouldn't be voting. So
Right.
Gatz and Green may win out in the West Coast, but you're going to be second. Donnie McPherson may win on the East Coast, but you're going to be second. Well, they're going to be third and fourth in some of these deals, but you're going to be second. You're going to win the Midwest. I mean, he literally broke this thing down to the point where it's like, hey, Brandy, that really makes sense. But then it's like, no, I can't think that, right? I can't think that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. So, I remember Jim Nantz came up to me and said, hey, no matter what happens, you had an incredible year. And I was like, dang, I didn't win it. Then James Brown came up to me and said, hey, you really deserve to be here. And I'm like, well, maybe I did. That's literally, that's how you're going. I mean, you have a conversation with one guy, I won it. You have a conversation with another guy, you didn't win it. So it was, so my expectations were all over the place, man. And, of course, they didn't do it like they did it now. I do it there like they do it now. It was lickety split. We got up there in 5 minutes, they made the announcement.
Yeah. So when they did make the announcement and you heard your name, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
I just couldn't believe it, man. It's probably the worst speech I ever gave in my life. I didn't know what to say, how to say it. I could barely get words out. I thanked my mom, my parents, and Coach Holtz, and that was it. I got off the stage. But, I think you sort of realize, though, pretty quickly that at least your name has changed. I don't know about your life, but because now you'll never be Tim Brown anymore. You'll always be introduced as Heisman Trophy winner Tim Brown, and I think at least I realized that much. And so it was an overwhelming time, man, because for a kid who went to college on a football scholarship, not really, understanding what he had, and to end up with a Heisman Trophy was a huge leap.
Well, listen, clearly you made the right choice at Notre Dame. Clearly it worked out for you. And as many people knew you for your collegiate success, obviously there's a whole nother deal and a whole nother level of this when you go into the NFL. So why don't we take our first break here? When we come back on this episode of Half Forgotten History, we'll get into the NFL experience for Tim Brown, or as he's known, Touchdown Timmy. Stay with us. We're coming right back. You open up a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter and you're opening more than doors. You're unlocking potential to do your own thing, be your own boss, and live out your own dreams. With 16 body types, your choice of a gas or diesel engine, and thousands of ways to customize, a Sprinter van is capable and versatile enough to help you drive your ambitions as far as you want to take them. So go ahead, unlock your potential inside a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. All right, everybody, I want to tell you about an app I use quite frequently, and it's Zelle. Look, whenever you're out on the golf course, you're playing with your buddies, the round is over, you've either won or you've lost, and it's time to either collect your rewards or give away your punishment. Using the Zelle app is so simple and easy. You don't have to reach into your wallet, look for a 20 or a 5 and make sure you had the right bills. You open up the Zelle app and you either tell people, I kicked your butt today, give me my rewards for kicking your butt, or you can quickly and less humiliatingly just send them the money and you don't have to dwell on it. Either way, whether you win that round of golf or you lose, Zelle makes the transition of the funds so much easier and simpler, and everybody is a little happier. All right, back with Tim Brown on this episode of Half Forgotten History. So after college, obviously you played very well and you have to think I'm going to have a career in the pros, winning the Heisman Trophy. What were your expectations going into the 1988 draft?
I knew one thing, Trey, that I thought that I could return punts and kickoffs in NFL day one. I really did. Yeah. I really felt like I had the ability to do that. I really felt like I was one of those guys born to return kicks and punts. But what I didn't know was if I could play receiver in NFL day one, simply because I don't know if you remember, but Terry Andresiak, our quarterback, got hurt in the Michigan game, and Tony Rice had to come in, and he took over. Well, Tony couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, from 10 yards away at that time, and so we went to a wishbone offense. So I was literally for 10, 11, I was the wing back in the wishbone offense.
Right.
So I hadn't been out running routes and things of that nature, So I just thought I needed a little bit of time to learn the receiver position in the NFL. So we looked at it, Marvin Demoff was my agent. I said, look, Marvin, if Atlanta wants to take me number 1 overall, let's go do it, right? It's a lot of prestige along with going, being a number 1 drafted guy, overall. So we'll deal with it. But if they don't, let's look at these teams, man. I think it was Kansas City, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, Detroit were the 4 teams in between the Raiders and Atlanta. And my whole deal was those 4 teams all needed a savior, Yeah. So that meant that I was have to come and play receiver day one. And I just didn't know that if I would be ready for that. Then you look at the Raiders, and they got Marcus Allen, they got Bo Jackson, they got Todd Christensen, they got Mervyn Fernandez, they got James Lofton, And I just said to myself, that's the team I need to get to, because if I can get there, I will have time. They're not going to come in and put me in front of James Lofton day one or Mervyn Fernandez, day one. So. And that just worked out perfectly, man. I don't know what Marvin told those teams to get me there or if they really had interest in me or not. But to me, it worked out perfectly being able to get to the Raiders because that gave me time. And plus, I had a guy like James Lofton, who was my roommate my rookie year, teaching me, the game. And I don't know if I would have had that some other place, So I was very fortunate, man. And, I had a chance to I ended up leading the team in receptions because I think Lofton got hurt. Mervyn had some issues. But I ended up leading the team in receptions that year. But I think the first time I touched the ball in the NFL, I returned a kick 97 yards for a touchdown. So, that was, to me, proof that I could do in college or in the pros what I had done in college.
And with all that sort of tutoring and mentoring from Lofton, again, you couldn't have asked for a better guy. When did you realize, okay, not only can I play wide receiver at this level, I can be really good at this level?
Well, my second year, Trey, I tore my knee up. So
I remember.
I missed 15 games that year. Yep, so
only played one.
I tell people that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because I got a chance to look at the game from inside out, right? Where I was in the meetings, but I didn't have to go play. So I can see what was being said in the meetings and what guys were doing on the field. I can come and watch the game, tape from the game the day before and see what was happening and not be accountable because I wasn't playing, right? So I was learning so much, man. And so I really felt like going into the 90 season, I was a better receiver mentally than I was, my rookie year. But I don't think it really kicked in until the end of 91, early 92 is when I felt like I felt like I was being caged up then because the Raiders, still they weren't playing me a lot. And, so I felt like, man, I'm ready. It's time to go. And it took Mervin Fernandez getting hurt in early in 92 for me to start. And I started then and, started every game until I left the Raiders in 04.
Some of those names that you just mentioned, we talked about Lofton in the Hall of Fame and you mentioned some of those other guys, but we sort of glossed over Bo. I don't know if I've ever seen a better athlete in my life than Bo Jackson. And that's just an observation from someone watching him. Yeah. What was it like being a teammate of his and just seeing this specimen, for lack of a better term, that felt like he could do anything he wanted whenever he wanted?
I mean, people ask me about Bo, and literally the only thing you can say is freaky. I mean, it was just, just a freak of nature, man. I mean, look, I came into the league running 4.35, 4.33, 4.35, which is getting it, right? I mean, that's
moving. That's moving.
And so I had never been on a team where anybody was, that much faster than me or even faster than me. I was always the fastest guy on the team, I felt like. So we're playing Denver my rookie year, and the play is 16 Bob Trey, or if everything goes right, I come down and hit the safety. Bo comes right off my back, and, we got a big game. Sure enough, play goes perfectly. I hit the safety. Bo comes off my back. My thought was, let's go catch Bo. Yeah. Let's go catch Bo. Let's go. So I put my hand down, Trey. I'm digging, man. And Trey, when I look up, it was cartoonish, man, how fast he was pulling away from me, bro. And so I just ran off the field. And I asked the guys, I was like, was I in mud or something? And they's like, dude, don't ever run behind Bo. Whatever you do, don't ever try and chase him. And I remember the next day in film, my coach kept saying, that's one smart rookie right there. That's one smart rookie. It was, man, look, you just have never seen a man this big move as fast as he was capable of moving.
If he hadn't gotten hurt, is there any doubt in your mind he would have been a Hall of Famer?
Oh, yeah. Look, man, look, Bo had, he had the ability to turn it off and turn it on and turn it off. When he turned it on, you couldn't deal with him, man. If you made him mad and he wanted to run over somebody, I mean, he came in the meeting room one day and they were putting in plays and, he stuttered at the time. Yeah. And he got up and he said, Bo don't need blocking. Bo don't need blocking. And I was like, Bo, what are you talking about? Yeah. So they ended up devising a play, man. They call it Bo reverse left, Bo reverse right. And what they would do, they would pitch him the ball right, and the whole team will run to the right? And Bo will reverse and go back, and he would have no blocking. And he would just run over people, run around people, run through people, and that was it, man. And, I mean, that was one of our more successful plays when he didn't have any blocking.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that didn't watch him play or just hear faint memories of him and didn't see it in real time, they'll look at his numbers and say, well, he only ran for 2,700 yards. He only had 38 games in his career. But, every one of those yards was punishment for everybody. No. I mean, it was punishment. It was punishment for everybody that was in his way.
Look, I've seen Bo, we play in New Orleans my rookie year. He had 2 carries for 58 yards and didn't play another down after that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, he would have put up 300 yards that day if he could have finished the game. I saw him reverse the field versus Cincinnati and go for almost 85 yards and touchdown, outrunning everybody. Look, this guy was freaky, man. There's no doubt in my mind, anybody's mind. People, trying to find a way to put him in the Hall of Fame now, I mean, that's how freakish he was.
The injury to Bo in the playoff win over Cincinnati, nobody ever heard the words avascular necrosis in football before. As it happened in real time, did everybody sort of understand how bad it was, or how did that come to be? Because it didn't look that terrible on the tackle. No. It just looked like his hip sort of was out of place a little bit. Yeah. Well, as the game went on, and by the time the game was over, there was
murmuring that he was going to have surgery the next day. So we didn't think it was career ending. We just thought, okay, Bo is done for the season and we're not going to have him for the AFC Championship game. I mean, that was the only selfishly thing that we were thinking about at the time. But as that week went on, the rumors started to, which weren't really rumors, that his career could be over because of what had happened. And I think by the time we got on the plane on Friday, it was a different mood because not just that our brother wasn't there. Our brother was done. His career was over, and so it was definitely a downer, man. Trying to go play an AFC Championship game, and Marcus and Al Davis was into it, so they started Vance Mueller, for a quarter, wouldn't let Marcus play. There's a lot of craziness going on. So, but it was super sad, to see his career end the way it did, for sure.
By the way, that AFC Championship game was up in Buffalo, and it was a freezing cold game. And you don't need me to tell you what the score was, but for people that are listening, it was a 51 to 3. Like, that was the Buffalo Bills K-gun offense to perfection. Yeah. Like, what are your memories of that game and how quickly you're like, wait, we're pretty good. What just happened?
Yeah, well, we were, like I said, man, because of Bo and because of what was happening with Marcus and them not playing Marcus, we just didn't feel like the organization was really trying to win. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's one of those things, Trey, when you get into a game like that, the minute things go bad, you sort of say, well, we sort of deserve it, right? I mean, because if this is how you're going to treat your players, if this is what you're going to do, then you're really not trying to win anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it becomes a very frustrating thing, man. You're playing for an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, and nobody's on the same page. The organization and the coaching staff is not. The players in the organization, the players, it was just a damnable way to be trying to win AFC Championship.
Yeah, and that sort of belies a really interesting part of your professional career. I mean, you played 17 seasons for the Raiders, whether it was in Oakland or with L.A., yet your relationship with Al Davis was always sort of complicated. How would you describe that dynamic?
Yeah, we had a relationship. That's how I explain it to people. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. When we saw each other, we spoke, but we never, in 16 years with the Raiders, we never went out to dinner. I mean, never had a drink together. I didn't drink, but never. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that type of relationship at all. It was a, employee boss relationship. When I talked to him, it was mostly about, football. I mean, I don't remember one time him asking me about my family, anything of that nature. Not that I needed him to or wanted him to, but it wasn't really just that. It wasn't that kind of relationship. So, and a very interesting thing, if I can say this really quickly.
Sure.
A lot of people criticize me because I didn't mention Al Davis in my Hall of Fame speech. And, I could only think about all the stories, and I won't go into the stories, how I know that he tried to derail my career. So for me, how can I get up and thank a man that tried to derail my career? And so, I think that, it took to God Almighty, brother, to reveal to me that, look, because, Trey, if you look at when I scored touchdowns in the Raiders Stadium, especially in Oakland Stadium, in the end zone where Al Davis' sign was, I would always throw the ball at that sign. I would always find a way to – and the media picked up on it. They kept saying, Tim, is there anything to just a coincidence, is what I would say. Yeah. But because I kept doing things, Trey, trying to get Al Davis, his approval. You make Rookie of the Year, that's not good enough. You come back, you make another Pro Bowl, that's not good enough. You make the Pro Bowl as a receiver for the first time, that's not good enough. You lead the league in catches, you do this, you do that. All these things you're doing, and none of them are good enough for him. But I kept trying. And, and it was just, like God telling me, look, man, what if he would have ever taken you out to dinner? Maybe you don't keep going at that level up. Maybe you level off a little bit, Yeah. So I think, man, everything happens for a reason. But so I had a chance to have a conversation with Mark Davis in front of about 400 people, and where I gave his dad, I believe, was his just due for my career.
And are you at peace with your relationship with the Raiders organization now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Mark and I have probably a better relationship than I had with his father. But at the same time, yeah, you know what I mean? You know, we're not buddy, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I know I can go there when I want to go there. And that's the only thing that's important to me, right?
Right. Absolutely. So you came so close in that AFC Championship game, or getting to the Super Bowl. You get to the AFC Championship game, you don't get there, and then finally, all those years later, you guys get back to the Super Bowl after the 2002 season, and you're taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. What were your expectations going into Super Bowl 37?
Well, we knew it was going to be tough because Gruden had just left the year before.
Right.
We knew we were running the exact same offense, and we knew audibling in the game was going to be impossible almost. And most of what we had done that year was Rich Gannon looking at the offense, being able to bark out signals. And, we, being a very veteran team, we were able to make that thing happen. But we knew that was going to not be an answer. So we came up and devised a plan that we thought would work. And, that plan got pushed to the side. And that just really, it's like going back to 1990. You're going into a game where when things start to go bad, you start to say, well, this is how things are supposed to go when you're doing what you're doing as an organization, So it was a tough night for sure.
Well, one of the things that I remember covering that Super Bowl was obviously the Barrett Robbins saga. And for people that don't know, Barrett Robbins was the starting center for the Raiders, and he sort of went AWOL and got messed up and was gone before the game. When did you guys hearing, hey, we don't know where Barrett is?
Well, we knew that I knew that Barrett was upset after the Friday practice.
Yeah.
Me and him had went to Callahan and tried to get Callahan to not do what he was saying that he was going to do. So I knew Barrett was upset. It was an early practice. We were done by 12:01. Of course, I knew, being so close to Tijuana, a lot of guys had plans, but didn't know what Barrett's plans were. But we didn't know until the next morning that he was, not with us, I would say, and which turned out to be a lie. And that was proven a couple of years later when I was told by the chaplain of the Raiders that he was with Barrett, the whole morning. And, Barrett could have played in the game because they had him at the hotel by 10 o'clock in the morning, but, decided not to. His punishment was he was not going to play in the game. So, again, are you really trying to win a football game when you're not letting your all-pro center, play in the game? It's a tough situation.
How much did that affect the outcome, in your opinion?
Oh, it was, look, Trey, if you get film of the sideline of that game, there were literally times where we had players who were running towards Callahan, during the game, what I mean? And this is not at the end of the game. This is early in the game. What I mean? It was just the worst situation. In the best of times, it was the worst situations, put it that way. You're sitting there playing for the championship of the world, and you really know you have no shot. Unless Tampa Bay just falls on their face, you really have no shot. And, of course, that didn't happen.
No. So to get there and have the opportunity and not cash it in, how did you handle that sort of disappointment?
I think for me, that was year 15 for me, man. And at some point in my career, I had started saying, I just want the opportunity to play for the world championship.
Right.
I had played, going back to Woodrow, in junior high school, I had never played for any city championship. I'd never played for any kind of championship, in college or whatever. So I wanted the opportunity to play for a championship, what I mean? And, so I got that opportunity, and I'm settled with that. Of course, being that I played a team sport, the one thing that disappoints me more than anything is that I never won the championship. But as far as personally being able to play in that game, I'm very proud that I had that opportunity.
Yeah, I've always said this. I'm glad you said that because if people are honest about it, like you just want the chance. Like if it doesn't work out, you can say whatever. Right. It didn't work out. That's why I always say losing in the conference championship game is 100 times worse than
Yes.
losing the Super Bowl because
Yes.
everyone's like, just give me the opportunity. And if it
Yep.
works out, great. And if we screw it up or I screw it up, fine, I had my chance. But to
That's
never
right.
get that chance, I think that eats at you more than losing the actual Super Bowl.
Man, I tell you what, and then, for us, we lose by 25 points or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
you knew the game was over early in the third quarter. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like, and funny enough for me, my wife had our twins that night.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so I left the game. The Raiders had me a jet, and I flew separately back. And 2 hours after the game, I'm holding two babies in my hand. So it ended up being a great night for me. So
Yeah.
it worked out well.
It is funny that you say that, though, because I'll tell you this great story, and I bet you can relate to it. I think it was Super Bowl 19. The Dolphins got their Dan Marino's second year, and they got their asses kicked. 38-16 was the final score. Okay, it was never even close. So Jimmy Cefalo, who was a friend of mine at the time, was a wide receiver for the Dolphins, and he was all despondent. He'd played 8 years, and he thought, man, this is it. We're done. I'll never have another opportunity. And he was going to ride back to the hotel with Dan Marino. So he gets in the back of the car with Dan Marino, and Marino's got a cooler of beers in there, and he's got a beer in his hand. Cefalo opens up the door and he gets in, and Dan looks at him with this big smile on his face and says, "Boy, did we get our asses kicked or what?" He was just like, it wasn't even close, so it's not really a big thing. And
Right.
And Jimmy was trying to tell him, dude, we may never get back here again. And it turns out that was the only Super Bowl Dan Marino ever played in his life.
Right. Yeah, it's something, man. I think for us, the only thing that would have made it better, the loss better, is if we knew that we didn't beat ourselves. You know what I mean?
A lot of turnovers.
If we'd have been ready to go and everybody's on the same page and we go out there and throw it on the field and we get our butts shellacked, I think you can live with that. But I think the problem, the only things that we have, the only hang up, when I talk to Gerry Rice, man, he always brings us. He brings us up all the time because we really believe that we had the team to beat, a very, very good, one of the best defenses of all times. But we really felt like we could handle those guys at that time. But, so I just think, man, if not for that, I think we would have been like perfectly fine with this deal. But that part eats at you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl 27 with 9 turnovers, but you guys gave them the ball a lot in that game.
Right. Yeah, it was just one of those games. I think Rich had 5 turnovers in that game. He didn't have 5 interceptions the whole year. Yeah. And he threw 5 interceptions in that game. So that just shows you how off the whole offense was that night.
All right, so let's move on to a happier topic then. Okay, let's get off the misery of losing Super Bowl 37 and everything that went on, because that was a crazy week. If you can't have team success, then I guess the next best thing is going to be individual success. And there's no doubt about that. You were one of the first few guys after Gerry Rice. By the way, how great is that? You started your career opposite James Lofton, and you finished your Raiders career opposite Gerry Rice. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You were one of the first guys to cross 1,000 receptions. And now with the way the game is played, it's like, oh, you're not great if you don't have 1,000 receptions. Michael Irvin's in the Hall of Fame with 750. It was a different time, a different era, even in the mid-'90s. What did it mean to you to be one of the first few guys after Gerry to cross 1,000 career receptions?
Well, it really meant a lot, man. I had played throughout my career. I played with 20 different quarterbacks, and I don't know if anybody will ever accomplish that feat with that many quarterbacks, So I think for me, playing with all the different offensive coordinators, 6, 7 head coaches, but still being able to get things done year after year after year was what I was really proud of. And when it looked like I had a chance to get to 1,000 catches, I was really blown away by that, and to see how few guys had done it at the time, was even more exciting to me. But at the same time, my whole focus was always about trying to get the Raiders to a Super Bowl and win, man. And I think by keeping that focus and, working towards that end, things just kept working out for me.
Yeah. And so you retired after the 2004 season with the Bucs, and you had to wait a while till you heard your name called in Canton. What was that like? Because you can't. It's sort of weird with the Hall of Fame because they sort of stack it against, well, who are the other positions up at this time in this class, and how do they rate against the people here? And at some point, you're like, okay, my numbers can't be changing. Like, I mean, I can't do anything about it. So why am I in a better position in 2015 than I was 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was tough, man. We knew coming out because Gerry went back to play in '05, but he retired early enough to be considered for the same class. So we knew that Gerry was probably going to be. There was talk initially that they were going to take, Gerry and one other receiver in with them. And but then when that didn't happen, we just felt as if, when I say we, I'm talking Chris Carter and Andre Reed, that they were going to go, okay, one of y'all go 1 year, one of y'all go the next year, and one of y'all go the next year. But instead, they waited 3 years before they started that. You know what I mean? And I think those 3 years is what frustrates, I can say Andre for sure. I haven't really talked to Chris about it lately, but I think that's what really frustrates us is, why did you wait 3 years to do it? I mean, you knew that, for the most part, the guys, we had to go in. So why wait 3 years before you start with that deal? So Chris went in first, and Andre, and then myself, but, look, at the end, and I got to tell you this little story, when I get the announcement in the room, Big Dave comes to the room, makes it announcement, whatever, and it's great. I'm crying, I'm all this. I call my mom and tell my mom, and my 6-year-old, my son at the time is 12 years old. He's sitting right next to me on the bed, listening to me talk, and I make the statement, hey, this probably should have happened 6 years ago, right? So I get off the phone, and he looks at me, he said, hey, Dad, I know you're disappointed about going in now, but he said, think about this. This kid is 12 years old. He said, if you'd have gone in 6 years ago, me and his twin sister, Marmar, he said, Marmar and I would not have understood it. But he said, today we understand it. And so I'm like, oh man, now I'm feeling like a heel. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about myself, right? I shouldn't be, So look, everything, like you said earlier, man, timing is always right, and God never makes a mistake, brother. So it's all good.
Yeah. And the moment when you heard the news, like, how did it impact you?
You really thought that you would be saying, oh, well, by time and all that stuff, man. Bruh, when you hear those words, you're now in the Hall of Fame forever. I mean, I don't know any man on this earth who could hold back tears in that situation, because, I mean, it's just like a release of all your whole football career, and now it's being culminated in the NFL Hall of Fame, and it'll be talked about forever and forever. Look, I mean, that's what this thing is all about.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, people always say, well, did he win a Super Bowl? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, the Hall of Fame is not about team success. The Hall of Fame is about individual excellence. And that's what gets you in. Like, I hate that. Well, did this guy win a ring? No, teams win games. Teams win championships. The Hall of Fame is about, were you among the best to ever do it when you played? And that has to be something that makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that, look, man, like I said, doing it the way I did it, with literally no help for many years, and no disrespect to James Jett and my team and some of my teammates. But, when Gerry came, there was a noticeable different, reaction to how teams, treated us,
Right.
And so, I mean, look, I'm extremely satisfied with my career, when I'm talking about personal goals, and don't really believe I could have done more. I think I got as much out of my body and out of my career as I could have possibly gotten.
Well, it's there in Canton forever, and that's one of my favorite trips to make every year. Why don't we take our final break here? We'll come back. We'll wrap things up on this really cool edition of Half Forgotten History with Tim Brown. We're coming right back. What's up, everybody? The NFL playoff picture is beginning to come into focus as we head into the final third of the regular season, with Week 13 almost upon us. And if you want to get in on the action, it's real simple. Know the trends, or as we call them, Trey's Trends, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. All right, this week, the Chiefs actually overtook the Buffalo Bills as the favorite to win it all at Caesars Sportsbook. The Chiefs are now listed at plus 400, Buffalo right behind at plus 450. Now, the team that represented the AFC last year, the Cincinnati Bengals, they're still not getting a ton of respect. At Caesar Sportsbook right now, they are plus 1,800 to win it all. Those are the 9th best odds in the league. But one thing we know, Cincinnati's not going to be intimidated when they play the Chiefs in Week 13 in Cincinnati. Why do we know that? Well, this will be the third meeting between these two in less than 12 months. And the Bengals have won each of the previous two. And in each of those previous two games, Week 17 a year ago and the AFC Championship game, they were down 11 at the half, held the Chiefs to just 3 points in the second half, and won both of those contests on last-second field goals by Evan McPherson. And by the way, since he comes in on a major role after starting the season 0-2, the Bengals are 7-2 straight up and 8-1 against the spread, but the Chiefs are also on a roll, having won 5 straight games. If you're ready to place your bets, it's very simple. Download the Caesar Sportsbook app and get started. All right, back with Tim Brown on Half Forgotten History. So obviously the rules have changed dramatically in football right now. How many more receptions would you have had in the current way the game is played, and especially the way it's officiated and defended?
I a couple of years ago when Waller broke my catches record with the Raiders,
yep.
I was all over Gruden. I mean, joking with him, man. You could have thrown the ball to the fullback a couple of times. You didn't have to get him the ball and all that, And he said to me, Tim, don't you ever feel slighted by numbers that have been put up now, because if you and Gerry were playing today, you guys will average 200 catches for over 2,000 yards easily. And in a way, I sort of believe that, because now I understand we played the game the way we played it, and if we were playing today, then we would be playing it the way they're playing it. I get that, but man, I caught 80% of my passes over the middle of the field.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Where it was dangerous,
Yes, sir.
I mean, life-ending dangerous at that time,
Yeah.
And to know today that I could do that with no encumbrances at all, nobody have to worry about it, people taking your head off. I mean, yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun to be playing for sure.
Is there a guy playing now that you're like, oh, he reminds me of me?
You got a lot of taller receivers now, a lot of guys, I mean, Devontae is a good little route runner, I love watching him play. I love watching the kid from Chicago, number 11. Mooney. Yeah. My God, I mean, he's a route runner, and, I can't relate to guys who are 6'3", 6'4", running down the field, jumping over people's head, because that wasn't my game, but to see these guys running routes in the middle of the field and running, corner routes and all that stuff, is what I like to see.
And what are you up to now? Tell us a little bit about the things you're doing now.
Well, one of the big things I'm doing, I got all my H2H gear on, man. A couple of years ago, when I went into the Hall of Fame, I was told that I was only the 9th guy to win the Heisman and be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And since then, Woodson just went in last year to make 10. So we decided to get together, man, and try and do something great. We formed a foundation. We left an incredible legacy on the field. Let's see what we can do off the field. Got together with the NFL Films, man. We shot a documentary last year that's going to air the night before the Super Bowl on Fox, The Perfect 10. More men have walked on the moon than have accomplished this feat. So you got Roger, Doak Walker, Paul Horning, myself, Marcus, Barry, Tony, Earl, and persona non grata, Mr. O.J. Simpson, who is a part of the deal, but not a part of the deal, right? So
understood.
So it's a beautiful thing, man. That guys that we've never said in the room before. The 7 of us, of course, we lost Doak and Paul.
Right.
The 7 of us had never been in the room before all together, and it was great to be able to hear the stories, man, and how and the whys of how we got here.
That's a great way of framing it. More people have walked on the surface of the moon than have won the Heisman Trophy and gotten into the Hall of Fame. That's a flex. Okay. Like being in the Hall of Fame is supposedly the most exclusive fraternity. I think you just took it up a notch.
Right. Yeah. It's, I was shocked when I was told that, man. And immediately went to Marcus, who's obviously a really good friend. And he was like, Tim, no way. I was like, bro, it's real. It's really, it's the truth. And so we knew we had to do something with this, man. And we've had companies who want to partner with us and really, we're going to do some branding stuff, obviously, trying to get the name out there. But the whole goal is to be able to help companies. And, Marcus and I and Charles, we play a lot of golf. We go to a lot of golf tournaments. And to see what some of these guys are doing in their cities, man, is really remarkable. So we may not be on TV giving $100,000 away, but to give 20, 25,000 to these guys who are trying to do something in these communities is really would be really helpful for them.
Well, that's really cool, and way to spin it to something you can give back to some other people. Yeah. Listen, Tim, I really enjoyed your career. Always love watching you play. Thanks for taking the time out with us today on Half Forgotten History. We really appreciate it.
Trey, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
So once again, thanks to Tim Brown for sharing his story, including that unbelievable story about hiding in the closet with chicken during the height of the investigation into SMU. Coming up next week, we're going Raider to Raider, one Hall of Fame wearer of the silver and black to another. The first father of linemen in football, Villanova's own Howie Long, will join us on next week's Half Forgotten History episode. We hope to see you then.